Hello and welcome back to the third stream of this coding live stream that I'm doing this month of at least 60 hours. So today we're going to be doing something a little different than the previous 2 days. We're going to be using the count up timer that I created in the first stream that I named Stream 0, but I'm going to rename this probably doesn't matter for anyone watching this after the fact, but I'm going to rename the previous 2 streams because I started at 0, but then it gets confusing for people to see stream 2 and then it's the third stream because not everyone thinks like a computer scientist. So I'm going to rename them to like the normal numbers that people use. So today we are going to be doing some Swift programming, and Swift is the programming language that was created by Apple and released in 2014, and it's the programming language that they want people using to create iOS apps and maybe some server-side stuff, Mac OS apps, and iPad OS apps. So everything with Apple, they created their own programming language that they've been updating pretty much every year, and it's pretty good. It's a modern programming language. And you'll see how it's a little bit different than JavaScript. Actually, quite a bit different than JavaScript. There's some really cool features in Swift that don't exist in JavaScript, because you got to realize that JavaScript was made to create like simple, tiny like web apps back when the internet was kind of like growing in popularity, and it's been expanded to do a lot more. So the first thing I'm going to do is start my count up timer. So let me go over to the desktop where I have the file that I created in Stream 0 or Stream 1. By the time you're seeing this, I'm going to rename all the streams, probably create better thumbnails for them, because Stream 1, 2, 3 is like people have no idea what I do in them. So I'm going to label them and maybe put a little description that's a little bit more appropriate. All right, so in my desktop, I am going to run the count up timer. And as soon as I do that, we should see the count up timer start at the bottom right. But first I have to make sure that it is white. The font is white. Yesterday we made it black because we were using the web browser and coding with a white background. So now I got to make sure that I make the timer white so that it is visible to anyone that's seeing this. All right, so I'm doing that right now. And I think I'm ready to go. I think I can start my timer right now. Let's see. Okay, so there it goes. All right. So now I can minimize this. As long as I minimize that, actually, right now you won't see the timer, but when I get to Swift Xcode, which is the IDE for Swift, you'll be able to see that. But I'm going to start off with a project that I did like 2 or 3 weeks ago called Destiny. So this was a project in a course that I'm doing right now. So let me actually open up the course for anyone that might be interested in also doing the same thing. No, that's not what I want. I don't want a new terminal window. I want a new Safari tab. So this is Udemy. Angela Yu is the teacher. So for anyone interested in learning Swift 5 and iOS 13 programming, this course is really good. It starts off like really understandable to anyone that's been working with JavaScript. There is one module that's really tough, but if you do it a few times, you might be able to get through it. And I just like the way that she teaches. She's actually a pretty good teacher. It's not easy to convey these difficult topics, but she uses humor. She uses some good animations and things to convey what she wants, to teach you how to code in Swift, to make an iOS app or to make a bunch of iOS apps. So this is the course that I would recommend. I'm going to be redoing one of the modules that, or the final projects that I did a couple weeks ago. So actually, I don't remember exactly what I did. So this is going to be a good refresher. It's good to kind of review something you've already done after a certain point in time, because the way that your brain works, it's removing stuff that it doesn't think it needs. So your brain is constantly deleting stuff, if you want to think about it like that. Constantly deleting things that it doesn't think it needs to use or won't need in the future. So if you learn something and then you don't use it over and over and over again, your brain kind of throws it out the window. So I'm going to be redoing this to kind of like force my brain to relearn it and to rethink it. And And that's really the main idea. And, maybe someone will get something out of this. Or maybe, get Angela's course or start doing some iOS programming themselves. Or maybe they'll help me out. So maybe I get stuck, maybe I have a question, and someone who's watching this might know a little bit of Swift. So this app was a choose your adventure app. So the way that it worked, it was, actually, I think I'll be able to show you in just a minute. All right, let me clone this. So the way that I'm going to bring it into Xcode is I'm going to clone this this project. Let me close this. I'm going to clone it so that I don't have to remake it from scratch or go into the terminal and download it. In Xcode, you can just literally clone any project that already exists on GitHub. I'm going to save it on let's save it on the desktop. And we'll call it Destiny. Oh, so I got the layout practice one. So I also want to practice laying out buttons and objects in iOS because I'm really having a hard time understanding how all that works. So, you want to practice stuff that you're not good at, to get better at it. If I practice stuff that I already know, I'm not going to get that much better, or I'm not going to really improve as a coder. So let me just expand this a little bit so that it fits the screen. All right, that should be pretty good. So Destiny is the name of this app that we're going to be creating. The goal of this challenge is to practice the MVC design pattern. So that's the Model View Controller design pattern. And I realized for anyone watching this in 2020 or 2021 or whenever in the future, I realized that Apple is now pushing Swift UI and they're working on Swift UI, but this is going to be a UI kit app. So I'm going to, I decided about a month ago that I was going to learn some Swift. I did it a few years ago, actually, when it first came out. I remember doing a course by someone else on Udemy, and I did it for a few weeks in the summer, but I pretty much forgot everything that I learned back then. And that back then, I think it was Swift 1.0, maybe even 2.0. But now they're up to Swift 5, and things are a lot better and a lot different. So I am going to continue with Swift 5.2 or whatever it is that I'm using, 5.3, and we'll go from there. Let me just change this to iPhone 11. So when I run the simulator, it's going to simulate iPhone 11 on here instead of actually putting it on my phone, which you can do, but I don't want to do that because then you won't be able to see what I'm creating. All right, so we're going to be practicing the MVC design pattern. And let's see, what we will create is a choose your own adventure game similar to the App Store hit Lifeline. The app will tell a story depending on what the user chooses and can be fleshed out and modified to provide an engaging storytelling experience. So the nice thing about this app or this project is that they give you the stories. You just have to worry about how to code it in the app, or how to get pieces of the story in the actual interface. So I'm going to be coming back to this README later on. Actually, maybe pretty soon, but later on, I won't start with this yet. All right, so let me open up my folders. Let's look at the, so to actually see the storyboard of the app, I'm going to go into the view and click main.storyboard. And I'm getting a beach ball, so it's going a little slow. I'm actually really nervous how my computer is going to handle this. Okay, so looks like it's loading. Actually, it looks like it did load. All right, there we go. We have a blank white slate. And the reason it's blank is because I downloaded or I cloned the layout practice app. So that means that I'm going to have to figure out how to put all the different pictures and backgrounds and all that and buttons on this myself. I have to do it pretty much from scratch. Let's see. If we look at the view controller, you'll see that it's pretty much empty. So this is basically the main file. When the code starts running, this is what it's reading first, the view controller. It looks like we have a couple of other files that were already created for us, two models, a model for the story. So we're going to create a template for our story, what would you call it, struct. So the story struct. And what that basically means is that we're going to be creating our own data type, and it's going to be called the story data type. Just like if you were watching yesterday or the day before, we have numbers or integers. We have strings for strings of text, we can create our own data types as well. And so we're going to create the story data type. Story brain is going to be handling all of the business logic, or all of the thinking behind abstracting away some of the thinking behind under the hood that we're gonna be doing, because we don't want to have all of the code in one file. So we really want to make our code very modular. So we want it to be broken up into little pieces in different files, instead of having everything in one huge file, that's thousands and thousands of lines long. Not that this project will be thousands of lines long, but we want to keep our code separate from we want to keep it in different pieces, basically. Okay, so let's go back to the main.storyboard, and let's start figuring out what we have to do. So I need to put a background on this in the interface right now. Right now I'm viewing it as iPhone 11. Down here I can see I could rotate the phone if I want, or choose a different device. Maybe I could choose an iPad, see what it looks like on that. But for now, I'm just going to keep it at iPhone 11. I'm going to keep it upright, portrait mode, and we're going to keep it in normal mode, not dark mode, because I could also do that. So Xcode is pretty cool because it lets you see what the person would see on their phone and test it out like that. Okay, so we have the safe area. So anything outside of the safe area could be screwed up. So we don't want anything to be too far low, because if someone swipes up on the iPhone 11, you need to be able to detect that. So you wouldn't put a button that is right on top of the swipe up line, the bar. And on top, you have the time, and you have if you're connected to Wi-Fi or to LTE or whatever. And the battery indicator, you don't want to have anything up there really. Although you might notice on some apps that you use, if you have an iPhone, that some apps go completely full screen and cover up or do things where the time is, for example. Okay, so where are my assets? I don't think I actually did the layout practice one when I first did this myself. So let's find some of these assets. So the assets are going to be the pictures that we're going to use in our app. So we have a background asset. So this is what we're going to put in our app. Actually, we're going to do this first probably. And then we have two buttons, a choice 1 and a choice 2, because this app is going to look. It's just going to have two buttons at the bottom, and the person's going to choose a button to choose their adventure, and then the label, where we're going to be able to see the text of what's going on in the story right above the two buttons. All right, so I know I'm rambling over here. Let me blow my nose. But it's just to paint a picture so that anyone watching this, maybe from the beginning, can understand what I'm trying to accomplish. And I like to think out loud because it helps solidify my knowledge, my thinking, my understanding of what I have to do also. So it's good practice to do. Even though I'm not sure how many people would get much enjoyment or use out of this, but I definitely will, so I'm okay with it. All right, so let's go back to my storyboard, and let's put that background picture, that asset, in the background here. So I'm going to select the view, and let's see if on the right side I'm able to choose the background that I want. All right, so maybe it's not the view. Maybe I want to select the safe area. Actually, let me close out a couple of things here. Let me close out my stream timer because I don't need that anymore. YouTube's going. I have my chat box open. I see that there's one person viewing, so hello, one person. And I also have my OBS, so I could see that the stream is going and it's okay. It looks like it's all okay. All right, so let me select the safe area because maybe that's where I have to put the background. I'm really bad at doing the layout stuff. Let's see. Okay, so maybe it isn't the safe area. Oh, you know what it is? It's not. I'm not putting the background on the view. I have to actually put a UI view that I'm gonna put the background in. So I have to put a little container that's gonna hold the picture. I believe I'm explaining that correctly. Bear in mind that I really only have about a month of practice with Swift. So if I say things wrong, or if you're trying to learn from me, learn Swift, learn Xcode, and learn iOS programming from me, you might realize that I have no idea what I'm talking about sometimes. But I'm just going to think out loud, solve these problems, and keep going. So I need to put an image view in my actual phone. What is this called? The view of the phone. So image view shows an image or series of images as an animation. Okay, I don't have to animate it. I'm just gonna click it and drag it over here to the phone. And then I'm gonna stretch it out. I'm gonna stretch it out all the way. So I wanna hit all four corners. And even though I just mentioned that sometimes you don't wanna put things in the safe area of the interface, I will be doing that just so my app looks like nice, okay? So I have the image view, set up correctly, but if I was to turn the phone, if I was to reorient it, you'll notice that it's only covering half of the phone, which is a problem. So what I have to do is I have to create these constraints, which are basically rules for how the phone will display the image view. Okay, so I think the constraints are down here. Right here, add new constraints. So this little tiny icon that looks like a TIE fighter from Star Wars. I'm gonna click on that, and it's gonna be a little tough to see because it's at the bottom. It's like off the screen, and I don't think I can move it. Yeah, I see, it's off the screen. I could see it on my screen, but it's gonna be off the screen for you, but that's okay. I'll explain what I'm doing here. I'm just gonna set some constraints and make it, I'm gonna make sure that it goes all the way to the edge, no matter how it's oriented. So I'm gonna do that by typing in 0 as the constraint that it should have on top, on the left side, right side, and the bottom. So I'm gonna add 4 constraints that are 0, 0, 0, 0. And I think that's okay. I think I could just do that. So yeah, we'll do that. So let me add these 4 constraints. And now, no matter how the phone is oriented, this image view is it's gonna always hug the edges. So let me try reorienting it, and you can see that it does, but it looks like when it's landscape, or when the phone is in landscape mode, it doesn't go all the way to the edges. You know what, we'll leave it like that. I'm not 100% sure why it's doing that, but maybe I know why. It's because my rules aren't perfect. They aren't exactly how I intend them to be. So let me actually look at the constraints and see what's going on here. See if I could see like why it's not going all the way to the edge. I think it's because it's going just up to the safe area. So you could see that it's a second item, safe area trailing. So maybe I could push that all the way to the super view. Maybe the constant would be 0. Okay, maybe. Okay, we'll see if that works. And then for the left side, when the phone is held in landscape mode, I am going to, where is that? So that's the bottom, that's the top, that's the right side, that's the left side. So this one all the way on the right, if I was to, it's called the leading view or the leading edge. I'm going to change that from the safe area all the way to the super view. So I'm guessing the super view is like the exact screen that I'm looking at. So let's do that. And then right now it has a constant of 44. So it looks like it's being shifted over by 44 pixels, but I want to make that 0 because I want to fill up the entire screen. And there we go. So now no matter how I orient it, now it should be filling up the entire screen. The UI image view should be filling up the entire screen. Okay, so I'm happy so far. So happy with that. I think I'm understanding it a little bit better. I didn't know that I had to do that super view stuff. I thought it would automatically just go to the edges if I set the constraints to be 0, 0, 0, 0. Almost like the box model in CSS, if you want to think about it like that, if you're comfortable or know a little bit about HTML or CSS. All right, so now I want to actually put that picture that was in the assets in this image view. So how do we do that? All right, it's going to be one of these inspector buttons. What's this called? The attribute inspector? I think this is called the attribute inspector. I'm trying to hover over it, but it's not telling me what it's called. Identity inspector, and the next one, attributes inspector. Good. Okay, so this is the attributes inspector. This allows me to inspect the characteristics of what I have on the screen right now. Can I just select image? Let's try that. So I'm going to select image from in the image view and hit background, and it looks like it did that. So it looks like it filled up, it put the image where I wanted it, even though it doesn't look correct yet, and I'll show you why. I think I have to stretch it out a little bit. So yeah, if I reorient it, it puts the image right in the middle. So that's not exactly what I want. If I go back to my background, I want to make sure that it fills up everything. So maybe I have to change the aspect fit to aspect fill. So I'm going to fill up the entire screen. There we go. So if you change the characteristics here, it's doing all the code behind the scenes, changing the code behind the scenes, I'm guessing. Let's reorient it and see how that looks. All right, when you reorient it, it doesn't look so great. Why is that? So, I wonder if I center it here. No, that's not what I want. Maybe scale to fit. Oh, that's going to be like warped. I don't really want to scale it to fit. I want to aspect fill. But when it's landscape, I want it to be a little bit different. You know what? We're not going to worry so much about the looks of it. We could also make it so that someone using this app can't turn the phone landscape, or it doesn't like change the buttons or anything like that when it goes into landscape mode. We could just force the person to have to use it in a portrait mode. Let's just, I could spend hours trying to figure that out, but I don't really care enough right now. I think it's not like a big deal in the grand scheme of things, at least right now. So I want to continue on by getting my buttons on the screen. So let's do that. Let's get the buttons on the screen. So let's first create 2 buttons, and then I could use the button assets to maybe as the background to those buttons. So let's try that. Let's see if that works. So I'm gonna look for the button. What's the difference between bar button? Bar button item behaves similarly to a button, has a title, image, action, target. You know what? I think a bar button item is when you have like a bar along the bottom or the top of the screen, and then you have like an item inside there. But I just want a regular old button. So I'm going to click and drag it onto the screen, and we have it there. We have a little tiny button. It's kind of hard to see, but it is there. It's there. Actually, I could zoom in and show you that it's there. You see right now it's just a text, like it just has text that says button, but I could change what that says. And I'm going to do that programmatically. Actually, I'm going to read from the data file that I have, and I'm going to fill in this button with some specific text that I want. But for now, we'll just call it button 1, or we'll name it button 1 here. And let's create one more button. So we're going to have a second button. Let me go back to the, what's this called? The adder or something? The object library or something? The library. And we're going to add one more button. So I'm going to click it, drag it onto the screen, and we'll just rename it or call it button 2. So I think I could maybe I could type out over here its name. There you go. And so now you could see button 1 and button 2. But it's not going to stay like this for long. We are going to change what they look like. Let's make button 1 have a background. Let's change its background. So how do I do that? In the attributes inspector, I don't care about the text color right now. Is there a way to do background? Okay, so here, the background. Can I select an image for the button? Or maybe I have to create 2 images and then put buttons on those images. Because right now what I could do is I could just have a background to this button, like let's say yellow, and then you could see the button, but I want to use the assets that they've provided me. But these assets are pictures. So I think, you see these choice 1 and choice 2 buttons? So I think what I'm going to have to do is use UI image views. Actually, hold on one second. Let me fix this. There we go. In case I'm getting a little bit too dark because the sun's going down over here. What I think I have to do is I have to create 2 image views and then place the buttons on top of those images. I think that's what I have to do. We'll see. Let's do that for the second button, actually. And then we'll fix the first button. We'll see which way is best. I mean, this will work. So This is, I mean, this is kind of okay, but let's see if, let me delete this button for now. And let me add an image. So image view, and that is going to contain the button asset that we were expecting. All right, and this button, I'm probably gonna have to give it some attributes. Like I'm gonna probably have to hard code how tall it should be, its height, maybe its width, also. But right now it is just an image. So let me just center it for now, and let me choose the image that this button is representing. So it's going to be the choice 2. Okay, so right now it's just an image, not a button. The top one is a button, not an image. But I think this is how I'm gonna have to do it. Am I going to have to put a text label on top of the, how does this work? So, okay, so I'm gonna have to, I think, put a button on top of this background, like I mentioned before. Okay, so let's do that. Let's place the button on top of this background. And when I do my constraints, I think for this button, I'm gonna have it make sure that, you know, it equals the size of the image, because the person should be able to touch anywhere on this image and you know, see it. Let me make the text a little bit white, or let me just make it white, so that it's more easily readable, and increase the size, the font size. Let's go to 22. Let's see how that looks. All right, I'm gonna want to get these buttons working first before I go even further. So I might have to spend some time on this. Let's think. Okay, so maybe I can make the button be the size. I'll make it I'll make it a specific height. I'll tell Xcode exactly what height to make it, but then I'll decide how far away from the edges it should be, so that the button will stretch out, or elongate if it needs to, or become smaller if need be. And I'll have it off of the bottom. So I'm going to add a constraint. I'm going to add a few constraints here. So first, I'm going to make sure that the button is always, let's say, let's see, what is 100 pixels? I'm trying to think. It's hard for me to think about how big this is, or what the pixels mean. Let's make the button 65 pixels off of the bottom. So I'm going to set a constraint to always be 65 pixels off of the bottom. Okay, so let's hit enter there. I mean, we're going to be getting some, oh wait, maybe 65 was too much. Oh, look at that. I mean, this button's huge, because I don't think I gave it a height. Maybe 65 is too much also. So let me delete that constraint. Okay, this button, I don't want to have a constraint on that button. Which one is it? Which constraint is it? Safe area bottom, choice 2. No, that's not it's the background. The button. I think this is the button one. No, it wasn't. All right, so let me Command Z to undo that. Where are the constraints for the button that I just added? You know what? Maybe I could just Command Z and undo it a couple of times. Oh, okay, so it was that last one. So if I redo, you can see that I did the safe area dot bottom one is the constraint that I just added that I didn't like. Okay, let's decide how tall this button is first. All right, so this button is going to be, let's give it a height of, I don't know, let's say 40. So it is going to be 40 tall. I'm getting errors all over the place, I think. Needs constraints for the Y and X positions. Okay, that's okay. Oh, I put the constraint on the second button, I think. And I need to do it on the image. Or the other way around. I did it on the image, but I didn't do it on the button yet. So there's my height of 40. So let me make sure let me see if I could add the constraints for the button to fill up the entire width and the height of the image that looks like a button. All right, so I'm gonna set that to 0, 0, 0, 0 for the button. for the image of the button. I have to be very careful how I phrase this. So this is the button 0. Actually, will I be able to do that? The height of 40. I'm going to add these 5 constraints. Okay, so it looks like, I mean, it did something. So 40, but it doesn't look right. Let me just undo all of that for a second. Oh, this is tricky. You know what? Let's let's forget. Maybe we should just forget the doing this background image thing, and then having the text on top of it, the button text. Or do I really want to give up on that? You know what? Let's Google it. Let's figure out how to. Let's see if we can figure that out. Okay, so Google Swift button image button text. Let's try that. A UI button with label text and right aligned image. The easiest way to change text on a UI button with image. I think that first one might have been what we're looking for. So let's see what the first answer gives. I need a UI button with image and text. However, if you're using the interface builder, is an easy way to do that. Select the button, set a title and an image. So already. Oh, can I do it on the button itself instead of having to use an image? Maybe on the button I could do the back. Oh, there is a background for the button. Let's see if I could see if I see that on the first button. Button 1. And where's the oh, there is an image. So I don't even have to do it that other way. So I was doing it the wrong way. So the image is going to be choice 1 background for the first button. Right now that button is just like enormous, but for now I think, oh my goodness, what just happened? All right, this button is just way too big. We're gonna have to figure out its size, I think, really soon. But that is how you would do it. Okay, so let me delete the background of the choice 2. So let me delete that image that I used. And the second button, so this is going to be button 2. So this is going to be button 1. The one that's pink. It's going to be button 1 and button 2. Okay. Actually, right now, button 1 is the one on the bottom. And button 2 is on top. So let me just... oh, I hate how slow this computer is. This MacBook Pro 2016. I mean, do not buy a 2016 MacBook Pro if you're living in the future. It's just too slow for streaming, or at least don't stream, and you'll be okay. Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. I'm gonna try to resize it, but it's, I mean, this thing is so slow. Okay, I think we got it. All right, that's gonna be our choice 1 background. So we should name this one button 1. This is gonna be button. Let's use camel casing over here. And then this is going to be button 1. And let me replace the positions. So button 1 and button 2 has a background, so an image background. And it's going to be choice 2. And again, we have the same issue where it comes up like really big, which is not what we want. And I clicked on it, and I'm waiting for it to be selected. This is really slow. Maybe I did this wrong. Okay, no, we're okay. Just was just a bit slow, I guess. All right, so we have our two buttons. We have button 1 and button 2. What's its current height? Oh, I could actually, let me think. I could always align it to the center, but I want to figure out its what width I should make it first. And then, and actually now that I think about this, I'm going to want to put something else in here. I want to put the label that's going to hold the text. So let me do that. So let us do that. So let's add a text label to our project, and it is really small right now, but I'm going to try to increase its size. All right, so Swift is Xcode is really slow on my computer. It is very intensive, I guess. So I might just have to stick to JavaScript for this month, which is really unfortunate because I've been enjoying Swift. But that's okay. So let us make it the size we want for now. Let's say that. Let's see about that. This button, let's see if we can get the right height for it. So let us give it a constraint and say that its height should be, I don't know, let's try 30. Let's see what that looks like. Why does it not go down to 30? Just gives me this red error. Oh, it also, okay, so maybe it's because it needs constraints, the other constraints also. Let me undo that. Did I undo it? Not yet. Okay, let's try again. So let's try with button 1. Xcode is really finicky when it comes to doing this stuff. Is there any way I could just change its characteristics right now so I could see what a height of 30 looks like? Maybe in this little ruler button. Here, height. Maybe I could change it from, right now it says 90. Let's try 40 and see what that looks like. Okay, that's a little bit too small, so let's try 60. You know what, 60 is still a little small. How about 70? Right, 70 looks like it's a little bit more, you know what? We started at 90, we're gonna end up at 80. I think 80 looks fine. It's kind of like a design thing. So now let's choose the second button. Let's make its height 80 also. Okay. I also want to dictate how wide this thing should be. So right now, I could like hard code it for now. Let's try 340 and we'll center it. And we'll do the same here, 340 and we will center it. Okay. Oh, why is it? Okay. Oh, I know why. We see the background. We see the yellow because I originally had a background on that first button. So I think I should be able to, yes, instead of doing system yellow, we'll just leave it at default. So that way we don't see that yellow anymore. There we go. Okay, what's next? We have to set constraints for these buttons because otherwise when we reorient them, we won't even see these buttons anymore. So let me think of how we should do this. So I think when you have two things on top of each other, you should put them in a V stack. So that is a vertical stack. So I'm going to select both of these buttons. Actually, I'm wondering if all three things should be in a V stack. Not 100% sure. Let's just start with these two. We could always remove it. So I'm going to click this embed in view and put it in a stack view. Oh, great. It just resized it like to some like weird dimension. Okay. Let us, I guess let's change its attributes again. Look at this width. It's 1400. So how do we change that? You know what? Let's forget the stack view. Let's just undo that. Even though that might be the right way to do it, I don't know. We'll get there. As you can see, I'm like learning this stuff as we go. So I didn't do this last time. Last time I went through this, the interface was all done, and all I had to worry about was the coding. So you could see that you could easily spend, probably hours working on the interface. And this I actually see with I used to see with my students. You as a teacher, you want them to be coding and figuring stuff out and actually doing like the thinking behind coding, the computational thinking, the computer sciencey kind of thinking. But sometimes they get stuck in the paint editor and they love doing that stuff, or they get stuck on making it look a certain way, and then they spend hours and hours working on that. When sometimes you just want them to code. But I just wish we had more time so people could do whatever they want. But since this is a stream that I have to do a whole bunch of hours on, that's okay. I can spend all the time in the world, even though I probably will get sick of this interface builder in a little bit. But making progress, I'm learning. It's just nice to have someone tell you exactly what you should do sometimes. So let's leave these buttons as they are and just put constraints so that it's 20 off of the margin, off of the left and the right side. Let's see if we can do something like that. So we should be 20. So I know you can't see it. I think it's off the screen right now, but I have a little window down here at the bottom that lets me see the constraints that I'm creating. I'm going to also make sure that it's a height of 80. I'm going to make sure the bottom actually has a constraint of 0 from the safe area. Okay, so this is this bottom button I think should be good. There we go. Okay, so I set a constraint of 0 along the bottom from the safe edge, not from the super view. And then I set a margin of 20 from the left and the right sides. So I think if I reorient the phone, it should just elongate the button and still be at the bottom. Let's see. There we go. So it elongated the button and it's at the bottom. Even though my label's screwed up, my second button is missing, or the first button I should say, but that's okay. Now let's work on this one. So I'm going to add constraints to this first button. It is going to have a height of 80, so we'll add a constraint of that. Same idea with the edges. We're going to be 20 pixels off the edge. And then from the bottom, let's see, what margin would we want to put? Let's see if we can do, let's do 10 from the nearest neighbors. 10 is going to be the constraint from the second button. Let me add these 4 constraints. And, I think that's okay. I mean, it doesn't look like 10 right now. Let me reorient it, and we should have the second button on top of the first. All right, so maybe we don't want a margin of 10 off the bottom. So how do I just select that constraint? So I have to, maybe it's in button 1. So I have to look in the constraints inside of button 1. Height of 80, but why doesn't it show the other constraints? I guess they're in here. Here we go. Button 2 top is 31. It's not what I want. Oh, button 2, no, that's the second button. The top of it equals button 1 bottom plus 31 pixels. I don't want that. I don't think I want that. Let's leave it for now and we'll figure it out. Where is the bottom of the, oh, I guess maybe that is the button 1 bottom. But I thought I set it to something else. Let me actually change the constant right here in the in this inspector. What's this called? The size inspector. Let me change that to 20. Okay, it's getting closer. I wanted it to be 10. I wanted these buttons to be really close to each other. And I think that'll do it. Did that change it in here? Yes. Okay, so that changed the constraints that I was intending on getting. This is good. This is good. Okay. Now when I reorient the phone, we see that our buttons are stretched out, which is what we want, and they're still 10 away from each other. So we're making some progress here. Looks like there's like a little white space over here. Well, what do I care? Why am I worried about that, right? Okay, so the last thing I want to do is put constraints on this label. So this label is going to, so this is where I'm going to store the text of the story. So what's going to happen is someone's going to be reading the story where in this space that the label is taking up, and then they're going to tap one of the buttons along the bottom to choose the next part of the story. All right, so it's like one of those choose your own adventure games. Okay, let's figure out the constraints for that thing. So it's going to be 0 off the top. We can go 20 off the left and the right, and then maybe we'll do that same thing that we did. We'll have it 10 away from the first button. So that way, no matter how the phone is oriented, it'll always be on top of the thing. All right, so let's try that. So I selected my label. I'm going to select my constraints. So it's going to be 0 off the top, which is going to be the safe edge, safe area. Okay. We're going to go 20, 20 from left and right, and from the bottom, let's go 10. And let's see if we could select button 1. Okay, good. So that's what we want. Let me add all these 4 constraints, and we should be golden. All right, it doesn't look, I mean, the top left and right look good, but the bottom looks weird. It does not look correct. So let's find that label. Where is the, right here, the label bottom. So it's so weird because I literally hard-coded it, and it still kept 106, which is what it's currently at. So I'm just going to change that to 10 manually. There we go. So this label takes up, it's right here, 20 off the edges, 0 off the top, 10 off the bottom. Actually, let's just make it 0 because, was this the right thing? Right here. So this one, we're just going to make this 0. And I'm just going to center like all of the text. So right now the text is along the leading edge, the left side, but I just want to center it. So let's, let me select it first. And now we should be able to select make the text centered, and we could actually make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to blow it up all the way up to, all right, let's go to 40. A nice round number. And let's change its color from black to, let's do white. So this would, actually no, this is fine. Yeah, I was going to say that this could be an issue if you're using dark mode or light mode. But since we have this blue background, no matter what mode the person's using the phone in, we're happy with what we have so far. Okay, so now, no matter how I orient this, we're going to be seeing the label on top of the 2 buttons. Even though the buttons look a little bit big, I don't really care. I don't care right now about the size of the buttons. Let me test it out in the simulator so you can see what that looks like. Because I haven't tested it once yet, and we're about 45 minutes in. So let me run the simulator, and it's going to take a little bit. Let's see how long to compile the code. It's going to take this code and create a binary, I guess, for the iPhone to be able to, or the simulated iPhone to be able to run. Right, so the build was succeeded. I just got a notification that it finished the build, and now it is launching the simulator. So as you can see, there is a giant phone on my screen. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller so you just see it full screen in your window. And I mean, you can see, right now I'm beach balling over here. It's not a good sign, but I'm not worried yet. Although I would like to start changing its dimensions. There we go, we're making some progress. All right, there we go. Now I can make this phone a little bit smaller. All right, so right now it's loading the app. And as you can see, this MacBook Pro is mad slow. I mean, this is still the intro scene, and we haven't gotten to the app yet. It's still opening. It's loading the app. Takes a while. It can take a while, apparently. But I'm not worried yet. I was kind of expecting the simulator to take a while to open because I have OBS, which is streaming. I guess it's very processor intensive. But we'll wait, and we'll see what happens. We have time for now. There we go. All right, so it took a long time to open, probably because it was the first time. Maybe the second time it wouldn't take as long. But we have our buttons here. I mean, we could tap them. They don't do anything right now because we didn't code them to do anything. And we have a label, which is just a bunch of text that we can change programmatically. Okay, so let's... Hey, Mark, how's it going? So I'm working on a choose your own, good question. So I'm working on a choose your own adventure game on iOS. This is from a tutorial that I did a couple of weeks ago. So I'm just trying to do it over again from almost absolute scratch. Where's my app? So I'll kind of show you what's going on here. So the way that it's going to work is that someone that's using the app is going to get they're going to read some text, which is going to be the start of a story. And then there's going to be two buttons, and then they could choose what happens next in the story. So if they choose the top button, the story goes in one direction. If they choose the second button, the story is going to go into another direction. And then once they tap the button, the story updates. It continues. The story screen updates, and the buttons update to the next part of the story. So that's what I'm currently working on. This is from a tutorial. This is not my idea. It's from a tutorial that I started working on that I did about 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I really just was doing it as part of learning Swift programming. So I wasn't doing it on my own like this. I was kind of being handheld a little bit, or I had my hand held a little bit by the teacher. Unfortunately, though, are you using Windows or Mac OS, Mark? Because this is only a Mac OS thing. That's the annoying thing about Apple, where if you want to build iOS apps or Mac OS or iPad OS apps, you almost have to have a Mac. Although you could, one of my friends does this. He likes using something else, something called Ionic, to make iOS apps. So Ionic allows you to use JavaScript and Angular to, you could do a virtual machine. It might be hard to do a Hackintosh type of virtual machine though. But if you can get that running, definitely. And I know that there are ways to do Swift outside of the Mac OS world. I just haven't figured it out because I just have a Mac computer. Yeah, so this is how it would work. There would be some text here. I would tap a button, then the text would update and the buttons would update. And so each button will have its own text. So it'll, maybe the story says you enter a barn, and then the first button might say you turn left, the second button might say you turn right, and depending on the one that the user taps, it goes on to the next part of the story. Okay, so that's what we have so far. We're doing this from scratch. We're doing the interface from scratch. I'm trying to figure out how to work the interface builder in Xcode. Xcode is the IDE that we're using right now. I really wish Apple would. I get why they do it. I wish I could code Swift on a Windows machine, just because I could probably build a much more powerful Windows machine for the same price. But I'm kind of stuck in the iOS and Mac OS world with the devices I have. Even though I like them, it's just they're pretty expensive. So it's the price you pay. All right, so let's close the simulator. Let us get to coding. So I think now that I have my interface good enough, we could actually start coding this thing. So let me close this. Actually, we'll leave this open. We're going to need this actually in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the assistant view so I can see the interface and the coding interface. on the right side. So there we go. The other way to do that is to select over here. Actually, let me close this and show you what I mean. So if I'm looking at the storyboard, I can hit this little plus sign over here and it'll open up. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted to click. I could hit these little lines over here and then select the assistant view. Or you could see that the shortcut is Control Option Command Return, Enter. So there we go, we have our assistant view. Let me just close this right pane because I don't really care about that stuff. I'm trying to make some more room here. Because right now I'm using a part of my window as my streaming display, basically. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay, so this was some stuff that I was looking at before, but it wasn't anything I ended up using. So let me just close out of that. Let me stretch this out just a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so this is basically the main. Let me just, this is like main in C++ or like the main file that the compiler will look at when it's creating the code. So view.load is a function that runs as soon as this view loads up on the phone. So what I have to do is I'm gonna have to connect the interface to this view controller. So this is a model view controller design pattern. So we have to connect these things to the code so we can code them out. So I'm going to connect this label, and label I can remove the text later on. I'm going to connect the label and just name it like the text display. So this is going to create a variable in the code that is pointing to this display. Should I call it text display? Let me just call it the story text area. We'll go with that. It's going to be a UI label. That's going to be its class, and everything else is fine. Okay, so now we have this variable that represents that, so we can, actually it's an object, and we can access its properties. So for example, right now it says label, but if I wanted to, what I could do is inside of this view.load, so what will happen is as soon as the view loads, it's going to run the code inside here. I could access the story text area, and then I could access its property, its text property. And I could set that equal to hello banana, let's just say. Oh, and there's no semicolons in Swift, which is nice, but since I was doing JavaScript the past couple of days, I got used to putting semicolons at the end of my statements. But in Swift, you don't have to do that. The IDE is really smart. So I think this should work. So this should change this label to hello banana if I was to run it. So let me compile it, and then it's going to open up my iOS simulator again. And hopefully it does it a bit faster than before. All right, there, iPhone 11 is starting. Why is it not showing up on the screen? Is it? Oh, it's behind the IDE. So it's loading up the new code. It's going to open it up. I'm simulating iOS here, and it should say hello banana. So this is just to show you that now I could access the things inside of the interface that I created. Is this not opening, or is it frozen? What's this called? Destiny iOS 13? I mean, maybe I have to reopen it myself like this. This doesn't seem right. Let me try that one more time. Let me try rebuilding it. So I built it, and let's try running it again. I'm trying to think, why wouldn't it work immediately? Whoa, this is not... Okay, there we go. I saw that like it looked all white, which is not what I wanted. We wanted to see the colors kind of match. All right, let's let that run. I won't touch it again like I did last time. I maybe screwed up the initialization process of the phone. Because what it has to do is basically simulate the phone on my computer, and my computer is I don't want to say it's garbage, but it's not great for streaming and coding, at least not with Xcode. It's fine for JavaScript, but Xcode is it's just too much for it to handle. So it goes really slow. Through the simulator, is there a way to change which version of iOS it uses? Actually, I think so. Let me see. That's a good question. I know I could change the iOS. I could change the device that I'm using. I could try this on an iPad, let's say, but I'm not 100% sure if I can change the version of iOS that it's going to simulate. I mean, I would assume that you should be able to do that. Good question. Yeah, I'm assuming that you could. I mean, let's Google it. All right, that thing is so slow at loading. So I'm just gonna let it. I'm not gonna touch it. Let's see if we could. Let's do Xcode simulator change iOS version. Oh yeah, so there's a whole bunch of. Well, actually no, these are the phones. But can you change the iOS that you're? Okay, the deployment target. So yeah, I can go into the project in Xcode and change the deployment target and then try to simulate that, I guess. Yeah, and you could download the different simulators. So you could test out whatever version of iOS. There we go. Okay, so it just needed to load and run by itself. So it works. So what happened was, as soon as this app opened up, in the view to load function or method got called, and inside of that I changed the text inside of my interface here. I should also be able to change the text of the buttons. So let's connect the buttons. Right now the buttons are, they don't do anything. I mean, I could touch them, but they don't do anything. So first, let us create. Let's create outlets to them. So connections to this the button. So this is going to be the choice 1 button. So first, I need that, and then this is going to be the choice 2 button. And to do this, I just hold down the control key. I click and drag to the code editor. Choice 2 button. So let me connect that. So as you can see, these circles are filled, which means that we have connections to all 3 of them. But now I want to create an action. So I want something to happen when the buttons are pressed. So for that, I have to do another connection here. So let me drag this over to our view controller, and it's set as an action, which is exactly what I want. I have to change the type to UI button, and I'm going to name this button. I'm going to name this action choice 1 button pressed. So this means anyone reading this code, they'll know that the choice 1 button was pressed. I mean, that's literally what I just named it. Okay, and I'm going to do that for the second button as well. Let's create an action for it. So it's already set to action, and this is going to be the choice 2 button was pressed or pressed. Let's change its type to UI button so that it inherits everything it needs from the UI button. So now what I can do is I could display. I mean, I could test this out by doing how do you console? Is it console.log? I'm sorry. Once you go back and forth between languages, maybe it's not console.log. Maybe it's print. Print. And let me create just a string, hello. So when I press I think the print will display to the console. Hello, goodbye. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually also going to change the label on the buttons. I think I could do that too. So choice 1 button, and let's access its text property. Is it title label? View that displays the value of the at the title. view that displays the value of the current title property. Oh, current title. So we have to set it, the current title that is displayed on the button. So we have to use the current title property on the choice 1 button, set this equal to say hi. Choice 2 button, same idea. We're gonna change the text that's in that button and just change it to say bye. Say hi, say bye. And so now when I press the buttons in the console, why isn't it not allowing me to get only property? Current title dot 8 dot. All right, so let me Google that, because I just want to test everything out as I'm going through this, because it'll make my life easier later on. So this is going to be Swift button label text. Let's try that. How do I change the button text in Swift Xcode 6? So this is an old question, but it's probably going to be the same. Oh, set title. That's the method that I want to use, not current title. Current title just oh, that's what it means. That's what the error means. The error is saying that current title is a get only property. So what it can do is it could read what the current title is on a button, but I don't set the button. I don't set the title of the button using current title. I have to set it using set title. So let me start over here, because that's going to be a little crazy to look at. So set title, I can hit enter to fill it to autocomplete. And the title is going to be a string, and I'm going to call it say hi. And then for the normal state, so the button in its normal state, that's when it's going to just say hi. Same idea for the second button. So we're going to set its title, and the string is going to be say bye. And that is going to be for the default state of this button. So when the button starts, that's what it's going to look like. I think I can do that. I don't think I have to name this parameter. I think it understands this. So now when I press the button, the first button, it should say hello in the console. And you're not going to see the console on the actual device. Let me start running this, because it's going to take 3 years for it to like build it and load it into the phone. Okay, so when I press the first button, so it's going to say, the button's going to say hi. That's the text that should be on the button. When I press it, it should open up a console window in my Xcode IDE, and I should be able to see hello. And then when I press the second button, I should see goodbye. And why don't I see the titles? Oh, why is this happening? Why does this happen? All right, let's press it, see if it works. It works. Okay, so pressing it works. So as you can see on the bottom right of the window, and if I press the second button, it's going to say goodbye. All right, so we're able to detect that the buttons have been pressed, but I'm wondering why it's not setting the title correctly. Maybe I typed that in wrong. Choice 1 button dot set title. Let me press enter. Oh, so it is a string optional. You know what? Let me set a variable, call it, let's call it hey, and just set this equal to say hi. And so now what I could do, let me delete this line, is instead of saying hi like that, I'm just going to say hey. And because this thing, set title, is expecting a string optional, so what that means is that there might not be a string in existence when set title is running. We know there is a string in existence because we set it before. We set it, actually, because it's a constant. I should make it a let. We set it before set title, so we know for sure that the string exists. So what we can do is we can unwrap that string by putting an exclamation point on hey. So this is like really weird about Swift. Swift is it's trying to do its best to make sure that there are no errors in the, already I'm getting an error. It does its best to prevent errors, whether it's or bugs in, at runtime or when we're building this at build time. Cannot force unwrap of non-optional type string. Replace question mark with whatever. Okay, so how do we get this string to actually show up then? If it won't, maybe it will. It's just not work. Maybe it just didn't work that one time that I did it. Let's try rebuilding it. So right now it's launching it. Let's see if it works now. If not, then we'll go from here. All right, so that doesn't work. You know what? Oh, maybe I could unwrap the entire set title. Can I do that? So put an exclamation point at the end of it. Cannot force unwrap non-optional type, void. All right, so yeah, so this doesn't return anything. Set title doesn't return anything. It just does something. Maybe it's not the normal state then. Use this method to set the title for the button. Title you specify derives its formatting from the button's associated label object. At a minimum, you should set the value for the normal state. Or maybe the text color is off. I mean, there's so many things that could be wrong right now, so we're gonna have to play around with this and try to figure it out. Let me go back to the main.storyboard without the code editor on the side. I just lost the iPhone simulator. That's all right. Okay. So let's look in the attributes inspector here, and let's see if our text is, or you know what's probably happening? The image is maybe blocking the text from being able to be seen. So how do you make sure that the text is overlaying? Let's see. Or would the background be here? No. Clears graphic content. Opaque, hidden. Let me Google that. I don't know why that's happening. So Swift, button, text, background color. No, not background color, background image. Create a button programmatically and set a background image. Maybe let me look at that. We'll look at the Apple developer thing. We'll look at Stack Overflow. Let me close some of these because I'm not gonna. Okay, so button text. Wait, let me do Swift button background image text hidden. Here we go. UI button text on background image using Swift. So I think that might be the one I'm exactly looking for. I'm new to iOS Swift. Have been trying to solve this problem for the past few days. Wow, poor guy or girl. Working on this for days trying to figure this out. Trying to add text on top of the button itself, on top of the background image. Let us hope that they get a good answer. I had the same issue. I found the same issue, and I had the same issue and found a solution. Use background image rather than image, and the text will remain visible. So instead of, okay, so we didn't set it programmatically like that. Maybe we could do that. So let's do this. We'll do set background image. So we'll use this code in our view did load. So instead of setting it inside of this, instead of setting it in the attributes inspector, let me delete this. So there's no default image. Same thing here. All right. So now we have button 1 and then button, I guess I never renamed it to button 2. That's okay. Doesn't really matter. Let's go to our code editor. And let's set the image of the buttons programmatically. So let's do that. I'm wondering if we should do it before or after. I wonder if it matters. So we'll do choice one button. Oh, I misspelled choice. That's why it's not showing up. Choice one button dot set background image. And now the name of the image. So the image is, oh geez. Will it be able to find it? Do I know what the name of the image is? It's choice one background. I think that's the name of the image. Let's try that. Choice one background. For what I mean, what are the states? Normal? What am I typing here? All right, we'll go with normal. Hopefully that works. Cannot convert value of type string to UI image. All right, so how do we access the image? Let's okay, so we have to create we have to use this we'll use a line of code like this to get a copy of the image. So we're going to do the image one is a UI image named choice one background. I don't know if it's a .jpeg. I think it's, let me try not using a JPEG at all or anything. And in here, instead of that, we're going to use the image one. There we go. And we're force downcasting it. I think, actually, no, that's not a force downcast. Might be. Actually, I don't remember the name of this. But we're going to treat it as a UI image. And I think that'll be fine, because this thing, set background image, is expecting a UI image. So we can't just pass it like this this variable unless it's that like exact type, I believe. Okay, so I mean, moment of truth. We're gonna find out if this works. If the image doesn't work, then we should at least see. Let me get rid of this this variable. If the image doesn't work, then we should at least see for the second button, it should say bye. All right, so let's hope it works. And if not, we'll figure out the file format of the choice one background image. And that shouldn't be too hard to figure out, because I could just look in the Finder in the project and see what it is. All right, so we have my simulator going. It's loading, taking its time. And it works. It works, yes. It's always nice when it works as you expect. All right, so we have our say hi button, and then we have the say bye button, but the say bye button doesn't have a background image right now. Okay, but if I press it, we should see in the console in my IDE, it says hello, and if when I press it, yeah, when I press it, it flashes black. Actually, it did for the first time, but it doesn't for the rest. When I press say hi, say bye, it says goodbye. All right, so we're just going to set the image, the background image of the second button, and I'll try to put the background image in front, or before the title set. I want to see if it makes a difference. First, let me create this let image 2 equal the UI image. So this is how we were able to obtain the name of the image. Named, okay, it was named choice to background. And then we're going to use that here as image 2. And let's see if we get an error. I want to try not putting the as UI image. I think this, oh, you know what it is? It forces, So this changes, so if I do as UI image question mark, it basically makes this an optional image. Optional types are like another type of type, another type in Swift, data type in Swift, where it could exist or it could not exist. So sometimes you have to like anticipate that something might not exist when the app is using it or trying to reach it, and so that's why I think we're forcing it to be an optional. Otherwise, and I could check its type by pressing Option and clicking on Image 1, and we can see that Image 1 is of type UI image optional. That's what the question mark means. Whereas Image 2 right now doesn't have that downcast. So, but it actually is an optional. So maybe we don't need this. Let's try it. We'll try it without the as UI image, and if it works, then we'll remove it from the previous one. Okay, so let us run this. So I press the run button. It compiles the code, turns it into something that is readable by the iOS simulator that is currently loading. It'll install it in the simulator and then run the program that I'm trying to run here. Right, and so far today it's been taking its time. It's been going really slow. I cannot wait for my new iMac to show up. What is happening here? All right, so it looks like we do need to force it to be UI image optional. For some reason, it's not. Right? And actually, it looks like why does it look like the colors are wrong? Shouldn't the first one be pink? All right, let's try this again. Let's downcast it as a UI image. I mean, I don't know why this is a downcast when this returns UI image returns it returns an NS object. So we have to do that UI image thing, right? Because this thing is expecting, I mean, set background image is expecting, wait, did I do that wrong? We have an error type. Okay, so yeah, so here we have an error type. Wait, UI image, there we go. Let me build it to see if the errors go away. Okay, we're good. And if we hover over this is a UI image optional, which should be what set background image expects. It expects a UI image optional. Okay, whereas if I don't have that as UI image, this returns, UI image returns an NS object. So I need to force it to be a UI image optional. So I think this should work now. Let's test it out. And actually notice that if it doesn't work, it must be because of the order. Because the first one worked okay, I guess. There it is, it's coming up. But the second one didn't work. Oh yeah, so the order matters. So we have to set the title first, then set the background image. I mean, let's test this out. So I'm going to have to change the order of line 25, make it line 26. Set title, set background image, image 1, image 2. Is the other one called choice 2 background? Yes. Choice 2, choice 1. Okay, so we're going to try running it again. We're going to test this out again. All right, so the build succeeded. It's loading again. It's a lot of downtime when you're doing this iOS coding with a slow computer and streaming. Works for us though, because we need to get to 60 hours, and we are currently at 6 hours and 21 minutes and 25 seconds or so. All right, so here comes my simulator. No, why is it not working correctly? You know what? Is it not like loading it right? So let me just type hello banana and then add a bunch of A's. Let me try running it again. But if I don't see all those A's on banana, then that means that it's not doing this right for some reason. Maybe I don't want to create these variables or these constants when I load the view. Maybe I want to do it before I load the view. No, see that. Did I misspell background? All right, let's try. Okay, so something's wrong here. We have a problem here. Let us see if we can. If we could, maybe we'll type in the file type of the images. So let me find it in the Finder. And it is choice2background.png. So these are PNG files. So let me just be more explicit about that in our code. .png and then .png. Let's remove these from the view did load. Let's put them outside actually, and let's only change the view once we we'll change the titles and the texts and all that stuff once we get to this. Once we load the view. All right, so let's try that. I don't know if it'll work, but we're trying here. We're trying to figure stuff out. Image 1, image 2, normal mode. And the waiting game begins. Okay, here's my simulator. It is not able to find them. Did I misspell? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? I mean, the buttons work, but they're not loading correctly. Oh, you know what it is? I think on one of these buttons, maybe I didn't change it. No, I changed the default image to nothing. I did that to both. Text color white. Text color white. The background is default. Same thing with both of these. State. Clears graphics content. I mean, maybe I have to. Maybe I can't do it in between. Maybe I have to set the background images first. Maybe I could do something like that for both of them. And then I set the titles. So let me just clean up this code here a little bit. I mean, right now I'm guessing. I don't know why it's not working. Because to me it looks like it should work. Image 1, image 2. Let's try one last time. If this doesn't work, then I'll start Googling stuff. Or maybe I'll keep going because we're getting hung up on these buttons, even though they're kind of important. But actually, I could live without the correct background image. I could still get it to work without the correct background image. Yeah, and this isn't even the right image. I think image 1 is supposed to be pink, and for some reason it's showing the purple one here. So we're gonna, I guess, keep going, and we'll come back to that. Actually, let me Google first. It's so hard to give up sometimes. So let's Swift set background. Okay, so Swift button set background image. Not working. Let's see if anyone's had that problem. Maybe it's because of the state. Well, let's look at the official Apple developer tools here. So the background image, adjusts image when disabled. No. Set background image. Wait. Maybe it's... for the specified button state. But what are the different states then? Normal. Okay, neither selected nor highlighted. You know what? Maybe for some reason these are selected or something. Let me look in the attributes inspector. There must be something here that's causing it to not... Highlighted adjusts image. Not truncate middle. State. Oh, so here we go. I think the state currently is enabled for this button. They're both enabled, but should they be? Oh no, they should be enabled. Is that one of the states? Okay, no, normal is when it's enabled, but neither selected nor highlighted. All right, the official Apple developer stuff is not that helpful right now. Maybe we should. All right, so this is a different language here. Maybe it's a matter of when it's running. Maybe it shouldn't be running after the view loads. All right, so we have the UI button. But when is it running? What's the image view? Oh no, that's not what I want. Let me try Swift. View did load set button image. That's the name of the function we're writing, right? Set background image. Sorry. Button set background image. All right, let's look at some of these. How do I create a basic? Change your button's background image. Let's look at 3 of these. You know, none of these are in the view did load though. What if we try running it before the view loads? All right, so let me just clean up the way that looks a little bit. Whoa, did I literally just copy paste that wrong? Oh my goodness. I just noticed that I had a choice 2 button here. That's what was wrong. I think this should work. Oh my gosh, did I really not have that right? I had choice 1 button 2 times. And that's why I was displaying oh my gosh, the second image on the first one. I am so ridiculous. If I'm gonna go back I'm gonna check the tape. And if that was the bug, if that's the mistake, that's ridiculous. What is going on with me? It's kind of funny when you think about it, how much time is wasted on silly bugs. There it is. Oh my goodness. I am so ridiculous sometimes. Okay, so we have our buttons working. We have our text inside of our buttons. The buttons are being, when I press them, something's happening, as you can see in the bottom right. I just have them right now printing out to the console. So what's next? Okay, I guess let's start creating this story using the story that they've provided for us. So let us, all right, forget the simulator for now. So we have to, let's look in the README and see what it says, if it gives us any clues. All right, so we created the view, so model view controller. We created the view, we started working in the controller. Now we have to create the model. So we have to create we have to be able to create these, we have to be able to store these stories and present them to the controller, or pass them to the controller when they're called. Okay, let me copy paste all this first, and then I'll start figuring out how to work backwards from there. All right, let me just highlight, go to the end. Is it not possible to copy paste that? Okay, there we go. So there, I copied it. You just make it a little bit bigger. This is going to be in our story brain. So story brain is going to actually store this stuff. So we are going to create a constant called story, or stories, and we're going to set it equal to an array of these stories. All right, so let me clean this up a little bit. There we go. So what is wrong here? So every story has a title, choice 1 destination, choice 2 destination. Okay. Oh, it has, okay, so right now it has no idea what a story is. So what I have to do is I have to let me just take one of these and create that data type. So I'm going to say that stories is of type array of story. And so now I have to basically tell Swift what this data type requires inside of it. So a story, so let me create that struct. A story is, let me put this down here. A story contains a title that is of type string. It contains a choice 1 of type string. It contains a choice 1 destination. Sorry, let choice 1 destination of type int, because it's an integer. It's a number, so we're going to call it an integer here. It contains a choice 2 that's also a string. Choice 2, which is a string. And it contains a choice 2 destination of type integer. All right, so every story has these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. All right, so we just created our own data type. So when we want to create a story, we could initialize it using that. So what this is doing basically, it is, let me build it and see if it clears off all the errors. Hopefully it does, because we just, we told Swift how to look at each of these. So let me see if I could make this look better. There we go. So when StoryBrain runs, it creates an instance of, it creates this variable or constant called stories that is of type array of stories, array of story, and it initializes it all of them at once. So this only happens when StoryBrain is initialized. So in our view controller, we need to create an instance of StoryBrain. So that way we could start accessing the stories inside there. Okay, so let's go back to our view controller, and we'll do that. We don't want to do that when, like, after the view loads. We want to do that before. So we want to do, let's create, we'll call it StoryBrain, and it's going to be an instance. It's going to be an instance of StoryBrain. Why is that not working? Okay, so let me think. Does it have to be a let? Let me think. Maybe just StoryBrain like that. Will that work? No. Maybe it doesn't know that StoryBrain exists yet because I have to build it. So I'm going to hit Command B and let us start typing in StoryBrain. No, it doesn't know that StoryBrain exists. All right, so that's a problem. It's not even detecting the file. So I am guessing that for some reason, this is not being detected correctly. So I'm going to copy this. I'm actually going to delete this file and just remake it. I think there's just some like weird things with there's some weird things with Swift sometimes. So this is already pre-made, so I think maybe that's why it's not detecting it. So I'm just going to delete StoryBrain. Do you want to remove StoryBrain to the trash or remove the reference to it? I'm going to throw it all out, and I want to make a brand new one. So let me create a new file. This is going to be a new Swift file, and we're going to name it StoryBrain. StoryBrain, and we're going to make sure that we are inside of the model for Destiny. Okay, so let me create it. Let me paste. All right, so I pasted it. So now, hopefully, we're going to be able to access it from the view controller. Hopefully, I mean, I might not be able to, but we'll see. Var StoryBrain equals a story. Oh my goodness! You know what it is? Maybe I have to just say that it's the type StoryBrain. No, I'm doing something wrong. Okay, so let me just Google what the issue might be. So Swift initialize or instance of model initialization. Swift init. Oh, maybe I have to put it when the view did load? No, that doesn't. Does that make sense? Let's try that. Let's see if that works. If we have to do it inside of here. Var StoryBrain equals StoryBrain? No. I really did think it had to be outside of it. All right, let's figure out how to initialize a struct or something. Nope, nope. Initialize class method. Maybe this is it? No. Not quite what I want. All right, let's keep Googling. So Swift, oh wait, I searched for the wrong thing. Swift initialize view controller. No, not initialize a view controller. Initialize struct in view controller. It's because I can't access any of the properties of the story brain unless I could bring it into my view controller. Var meme is of type meme. No, but maybe, okay, so maybe I'll type in Swift MVC, so model view controller, initialize. I'll open up this and that. If you're using the storyboard, you can remove the inits, and the view controller will have the... No, something's wrong here. You know what, while we're at it, I should have the countdown be visible when I'm looking at like white screens. Maybe I'll create another one for that. Okay, let's look in the program in the docs and see what that says. How do we initialize a or create an instance of what we have? No. Does it have something to do with the... No. Hold on, my music's going for some reason. I didn't even know I was playing music. So I'm trying to access stories. Oh my gosh, I know why. I think I know why. We have to put a struct in here. Struct story brain. And then inside of this struct, that's where I want to have the properties. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I forget these things. I think that's why it's not working. So now that I have my story brain struct, I should be able to create an instance of it in the view controller. So let's, var story brain equals story brain. Let me build it first, so see if it detects it. Okay, there, built. Var a equals story. Yes. Okay, so that's how I could do it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so var story brain equals story brain, and we'll initialize it. We'll create an instance of it. So now we can access the properties inside of that story brain model. So what we can do is, actually let's try to get the first story displaying on the screen. So story text area.text is going to equal story brain dot stories, and we'll look at the first story. So we'll do the 0th item, and then we'll look at the title. I guess title is what we let me look in the stories. Title is the actual story. Okay, so all right, so right now this is going to hard code the specific the title or the first story in our app. So let me run it. Let's see if it shows the first story correctly. Yes, it does. But we're getting an issue where we're not seeing the entire story because it's like, going off the page. So the way to fix that, I believe, is to go back to the storyboard, and we're going to set the number of lines. I think instead of being 1 line, let's make it 0 lines. And so it'll just make it as big as, it'll make the label as big as it needs to fit all the text. So with that, we should be able to see the full text on screen. All right, moment of truth coming up. Yes. All right, it's a little bit, it doesn't fit, but I could just make the text smaller because I have no idea what else I could do. So let me, or can I auto shrink it? Honestly, I'll make the text smaller. It doesn't need to be that big anyway. We'll make it 32. Let's try that. Actually, how big is that first text? Looks like there's one more that might be a little bit bigger than it. So we will go back to the storyboard. We'll make the text 30. I think that should be okay. So the label is going to be of size 30. And now when I run it, we should see the full text in the app. We'll see. I actually don't like having all of my having the images outside of the, actually I don't, never mind. Just need a ride, boy, question mark. Perfect. Okay, so we have our story, and now what we want is to be able to click a button, touch the button, and go on to the next story, the correct story, the destination based on that choice. All right, so we also here can we can set the title to be the correct story that we're looking at, the current story. Okay, so how would this work? So the title will be, it's going to be like the same idea. So let me think. I don't want to hard code it like this. Because if I actually, maybe the first story, it'd be okay. But for the rest of them, you don't want to hard code it like that. I want to be able to just push the button and it updates. All right, so we'll figure that out in a minute. I'm starting to feel a little bit tired. That's okay. Just give up. Dave, you of all people should know when it comes to coding, you never give up. You have to have perseverance. Ultimate perseverance. If you give up, you can never do 12-hour sessions, Dave. Or 24-hour sessions at a hackathon or something. Actually, I think, Dave, you just want me to give up because you want my money. Okay, so let us actually set the title. Right now, we'll hard code it, and then we'll figure it out later how to do it programmatically. So we are going to set the title to storybrain.stories. We're going to look at the first story, and it's going to be the first choice. Never persevere. I disagree with that. I say never give up. Storybrain, well, you can give up at a certain point in time, but not yet. And now we're going to do the second choice for the button title. So now what this should do is this should make our buttons not say hi or say bye. They should say, let's look in the Storybrain here. They should say, I'll hop in, thanks for the help. And the other one should say, better ask him if he's a murderer first. Okay, very Interesting. So let's run it. Let's test it out. Make sure that this is working, and we'll keep going. Actually, Perseverance is the name of the Mars mission that was just launched a few days ago. It's a rover and a what's it called? A drone. So they created a drone and a rover, and they called it Perseverance. And we got it. We have our text being filled in the button, or being placed inside of the button, which is exactly what we want. So someone would read this story, and then they would touch the correct button based on what they want. Right now, the buttons aren't doing the right thing. They're just going to, they're just saying hello, goodbye in the console, but the user would not see that. The user would just see nothing happening. All right, so let's work on that. Let's work on getting that one working. So we're gonna do all this maybe hard coded. We're gonna try to go from the first one to the second one, and we'll go from there. So when the button is pressed, what I want to do is I want to look at what's the current story. You know what? Could I do something like var current story equals 0, and then I'll put this inside of the side of that, so we're opening up the correct current story. All right, this is going to get messy pretty quickly. We'll have to refactor it in a little bit. I just want to get it working. That would be nice. Let me also close this and bring this over so we can look at the code a little bit more easily. Okay. Current story equals 0. When the button is pressed, we should increment current story by 1. So plus equals 1. Regardless of which button was pressed. Plus equals 1. Okay. Oh, we can't access this, so we have to put current story outside of this. Otherwise, we won't be able to access it. So current story, when we first load up, it's going to be equal to 0. And then when we press the button, it's going to increment the current story. The problem is it's not going to update the titles because those are only running when the view loads initially. So I really should have probably a update UI function that will update the UI every time a button is pressed. So let me create that. Let's create a func, call it update UI. And there we go. It's not going to take any inputs right now. We're just going to have it increment current story. So that way we could do that. So we will update the UI. Let me bring both of these. Oh, hold on. Let me actually think what we're doing here. Yeah, we're going to be updating that. We'll update UI the first time we run also. When the view loads, we'll update the UI. The problem here is that it's going to increment current story by 1, which is not what we want. Not yet. We want to increment current story when we press the button. Okay? And we want to update the UI once the button has been pressed. So update UI, update UI. So every time I press a button, I update the story, do the current story, and I update the UI. So that should update the buttons. It's not updating it's not updating the story though. So I'm going to bring that from the view did load. I'm going to bring that down here to the update UI function. And I mean, when this first loads, it's going to update the UIs, and the current story is 0, so this should be right. And so I should be able to press the button and it'll go to the next story. Either button will update the story. I'm going to have to change this because each story has its own destination for each button. But for now, let's just try to get it to cycle through the stories. And then we'll probably face an error once we go over the total number of stories that exist, but that's okay. All right, so I press the build and run button. So our simulator is trying to run what we just coded up. All right, we have our first story here. So now when I press either button, it should go on to the next story. Both buttons should be updated as well as the story title. Perfect. Okay, he nods slowly, unfazed by the question. And now I'm going to go on to the next story. It doesn't matter which button I press because they're both doing the same thing. They're updating current story by 1. Okay, we go on. This is the third story, or the third story in our array. Let's go on to the next one. Fourth, and now we have the end. So now when I press this button, there should not be another story in the array. Or there might be another one, actually. Let's test it out. Yeah, there's 2 the ends because you could end up there from multiple locations. Actually, there's 3. And now, yes, after the third the end, we have an error because we are out of range. So we see that the error is fatal. So if this was shipped to our users, we could see that this is a problem. We don't want them to try to access an item in an array that doesn't exist. And right now that is our problem because when we press the button, we just increment current story by 1 no matter what. So what we should do instead is we should identify the destination for that button of that story. And I know that's really tricky, but bear with me here. So if I look at the story, each story, when you press it, when you see the button choices, each button has a destination. So instead of incrementing the current story to the destination, instead of incrementing it by 1, we want to set it equal to the destination that's already built into this story. And it looks like in the final destination, the last possible destination that you could end up at, it resets the story to the beginning, back to the beginning, to 0. This is the 0th item. This is the beginning. Okay, so what we want to access is the choice 1 destination and the choice 2 destination of the current story. So let me go back to my view controller. So in our choice 1 button pressed, instead of incrementing current story by 1, we want to reset it to the story brain. All right, so let me story brain dot stories of the current story. We're looking at that item. Dot the choice 1 destination. And in the choice 2 button, we are going to do that same thing, but we're going to go to the second destination. And I'm going to remove these prints to the console because we don't need to see that anymore. Let's change this to choice 2 destination, and that is good. So that is going to re-update the current story to the next destination, and I think this should be good. Let's test this out. It's so annoying to have to wait so long to get the simulator going. All right, so here's this first time. We have this problem. The car has a blown tire. I'm going to try this multiple times. So I'm going to hop in thanks for the help. When I press that, it says, as you begin to drive. Okay? Let me restart this. Hopefully it takes less time this second time. So blown tire, you hop into the car. But let me try the other item to see, make sure that it's putting in the other story path correctly. Your car has a blown tire, so instead of hopping in, I'm going to better ask him if he's a murderer first. He slowly nods, unfazed by the question. Okay, so good. So it looks like this is working. It looks like it is the path of the stories is working based on the code that I have. At least he's honest, I'll climb in. That's kind of funny, actually. As you begin to drive, the stranger starts talking about his relationship, with his mother. So it goes to that. I love John Elton, the end. Okay. You bond with the murderer while crooning verses of Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Okay. This works. And then when I hit the or end, it should go right back to the beginning. The car has a blown tire. Let me hop in again. Let me say it's him or me. And I smash through the guardrail. Awesome. So this works. So I have my story working kind of like how I wanted it to be, actually. So there we go. And it'll go on for like infinitely. We got it working. All right, so let's just look back at our code and see if there's anything else we can do to make it kind of clean. Honestly, the issue here is that we probably shouldn't have... I'm trying to think, should we have all of this inside of the view controller? Honestly, it feels wrong. It feels like we should have, and from what I remember from a few weeks ago, it feels like we should have a lot of this functionality inside of the story brain. Because it makes sense to keep track of like the stories and the story changes inside of the brain of the story. But right now I just have everything in the view controller. Let me think. Do I want to embark on this mission right now? I should just be happy that it's working, even though there's some repetition. There's some things I don't like about it. Honestly, I'm just gonna stop here and call it a day. Call it a streaming session because it's getting a little long here. We are at over 2 hours. What's today? Today's the 5th. So if we were at pace, we would be around almost 10 hours. Maybe just under 10 hours because there's 31 days in the month of August. So, I mean, we're kind of close to pace. We're not too far behind. And I think if I just keep doing like maybe 2.5 hour sessions, and maybe one of these weekends I'm going to do a really long session, although that might be a little bit different because I'm not just going to, code by myself. I actually wanted to start doing some learning to code stuff. So I'm probably going to have my other monitor here. I'll have another computer attached to it, and I'll be able to learn and actually do it on here so everyone can see. But right now I'm just like practicing something I've already learned. Even though I'm not completely done, but I'm happy enough for today. So we have our app working, we have our story working. It's kind of funny. I guess maybe I should just explain and recap exactly what we've done here. It's launching, but I'll come back to it in just a sec. So the first thing we did, we started like pretty much from scratch. We started with a, actually I should test this out and see how it looks in landscape. But we started with a blank iOS screen. We created a label that was going to be used to put the story that we're going to update later on programmatically. We have 2 buttons along the bottom, as you can see. And we did all that from scratch. We tried out a few things. We spent like 45 minutes on that, thereabout. Then we connected the label and the 2 buttons to the code, the view controller. Then in our assets folder, we have 2 images that we wanted to use as the backgrounds of the buttons. So we did that right here. Then we created an instance of StoryBrain, which was a structure that allows us to to grab the stories. This is the structure that contains all of the stories. And stories is a constant here of type array of story. So I created a data type called story that tells Swift what belongs inside of this data type. Oops, so let me click on that so you can all see. And a story contains a title, choice 1, choice 2, and the destinations for each. And also you have to, Swift is a typed language. So as best, like whenever you can, you should give it a type. It can infer types, kind of like how JavaScript can. But if you could be explicit, you're probably better off doing that. So I did that. So I created a data type story. Said stories was an array of those stories, and then I initialized all of them here. So we created all of these stories here. So when StoryBrain was initialized, or an instance was created in our view controller, we had access to the stories and everything inside of them using this variable, StoryBrain. Then what I did was I set the current story equal to 0, because I was going to use this current story variable as the place in the array that I'm looking at. When the view loads, so when the app opens and the view loads, I set the background images of the buttons in here. And I don't want to have that in the update UI because I don't want to keep updating the background images. There's no need. So I just have that once when the view loads. And then I run update UI. So I run it for the first time, this function that I've created. And update UI sets the text of the initial label to the title of the current story. And then it sets the titles of the buttons to the choices that we have available in our story based on that story. And when someone presses on either button, so if we look back at our storyboard, we can see that we've connected these buttons to these actions right here. So if I hover over this circle with a dot inside of it, we can see that these are IB actions. So there's something that happens when this button is pressed. And what I'm basically just doing inside of those functions is I'm updating current story to the destination inside of each story. And then I'm updating the UI again. And same thing with the second button. I update the current story. I set it equal to the destination for the second choice. And then I update the UI. And when I update the UI, it presents the correct story in the title. And it changes the buttons to say what they're supposed to say. And one last thing to end this, I did mention that all of this should probably, some of this stuff should be inside of the StoryBrain struct. I really shouldn't have it in the view controller, but I'm getting a little tired and I'm kind of happy that it works. Maybe we'll start with that tomorrow, maybe not. We'll see. Actually, I don't even know if I'm going to stream tomorrow. We'll see. I probably will. Probably around the same time, around 6 o'clock, 6 or 7-ish. We'll see. Pretty exhausted from 3 days of streaming. But we're going to stop right there. So let's pull up our terminal window. So as you can see, our timer that we created, the count up timer, is still going strong. I'm going to do Control-C to stop it. So we are at 7 hours, 10 minutes, and 43 seconds. And we'll continue on. I think I'm in the way. It's too late now. You might not be able to see that time that I had. So I just stopped the timer. We're going to end the stream. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, to the 3 of you that are in here, and whoever else is watching this after the stream, thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow, or I'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.